At a family gathering, my husband's father refused to eat my cooking, saying, "Real women from our culture would know how to cook properly." My husband chuckled. "Maybe you should learn." Smiling, I stood up and said, "Then enjoy cooking for yourselves." The next time they visited, they were in for a rude awakening. I'm not a professional chef. I never claimed to be. But I do know my way around a kitchen. I was raised by a single mom in a small town outside of Charleston, South Carolina. She worked double shifts and still made time to cook dinner. I picked up a lot from her. I'm proud of that. So when my husband's family was coming over for the first time since we got married, I wanted to make something special. I cleaned the house. I set the table. I planned the menu 2 weeks in advance. I made cornbread from scratch, slow-cooked a pot roast, made garlic mashed potatoes, collard greens with smoked turkey, even peach cobbler for dessert. I worked on that meal for 2 full days. They were supposed to arrive at 5 p.m. Of course, they showed up at 6:20 without even a text. But fine, I brushed it off. I greeted them with a smile. His parents walked in like they owned the place. His dad, Richard, always had this way of looking at me like I was a disappointment he hadn't figured out how to return. His mom, Doreen, barely looked at me at all. We all sat at the dinner table. I was nervous, honestly. I didn't expect a standing ovation, but I thought maybe, just maybe, they'd appreciate the effort. As I started placing food on their plates, Richard looked down at the roast, sniffed, and said with a frown, "Real women from our culture would know how to cook properly." I froze. I thought maybe I misheard. I looked at Mark, my husband, the person who was supposed to have my back. He laughed. Not just a chuckle. A full-on ha-ha-ha laugh. Then he said, "Maybe you should learn." No one else said anything. His mom didn't flinch. His sister looked down at her plate. His brother smirked. I swallowed the lump in my throat. My hands were shaking. I wiped them on the napkin in my lap, stood up, and said with a calm voice I didn't even know I had, "Then enjoy cooking for yourselves." I walked into the kitchen, grabbed my purse, and left. Drove to the Walmart parking lot and cried for half an hour. Mark didn't even call to check on me until after 10 p.m. He didn't ask where I went. Just said, "You embarrassed me in front of my family." I slept on the couch that night. I didn't speak to him for days. When I finally did, I told him I wouldn't be cooking for his family again. Ever. He rolled his eyes and said I was being dramatic. So I made a decision. The next time they visited, I would let them see what happens when I really stop trying. They were coming over again 2 months later for Mark's birthday. He said he assumed I'd cook again. I just smiled and said, "Sure." I planned it down to the hour. The house looked perfect. Candles, fresh flowers, everything in place. But the kitchen? Empty. Nothing in the fridge but condiments. Not a single thing prepared. Not a single pan out. Not even paper plates. They arrived at 5:30. All smiles. Mark's mom handed me a cake box from some overpriced bakery and said, "Just in case yours doesn't turn out." I said, "Thank you," and put it straight in the fridge. Then everyone sat down in the dining room. Waiting. Richard looked around. Smells clean. Mark walked into the kitchen and came out confused. "Where's the food?" I smiled and said, "Oh, I assumed you'd all prefer to cook for yourselves. You know, since I don't cook properly." The look on their faces. I could have bottled it. But that's just the beginning. So there we were. My husband's family all seated at the dining table, plates empty, mouths halfway open like they were expecting a server to come out of the kitchen with trays. Mark blinked like he didn't understand what I'd said. Richard was the first to speak. "You're joking." "No," I said. "I figured since my cooking isn't real enough, you'd prefer to make something more culturally appropriate." His mom gave a weak laugh. "But you always cook. That's your role, isn't it?" I tilted my head. Didn't realize I had a role in my own house. Mark got up. "Okay, seriously. What is this?" "This is me respecting your opinions," I said, still smiling. I didn't want to offend anyone again. He looked at me like I'd lost my mind. "You made your point. Now just heat something up." I leaned back against the doorway. There's nothing to heat. They stared. Silence hung in the air like a thick curtain. I turned and walked away. Let them stew. I heard the fridge open. Then cabinets. The clatter of pots. But they couldn't make anything. I hadn't bought groceries in a week. I was eating takeout on my own time. It was petty, but it was planned. Mark stormed into the bedroom 20 minutes later. What the hell is wrong with you? Nothing, I said, flipping through a book. You humiliated me. Again. I looked at him, dead in the eye. You humiliated me. In front of your family. You laughed when your dad insulted me. You didn't defend me. You let me cry in a parking lot for 30 minutes and then told me I was embarrassing you. He was quiet. Just breathing heavy. You could have said something. But you didn't. And now you want me to serve these people a hot meal like nothing happened. He didn't answer. Just turned around and slammed the door behind him. Later that night, Mark's sister knocked on my door. Her name's Tasha. She's the youngest in the family. She's always been a bit more down to earth. She came in holding a bowl of dry cereal. I just wanted to say I'm sorry, she said. About what Dad said last time. And what Mark said. It wasn't right. I blinked. That was the first real apology I'd gotten from any of them. It's fine, I said, not knowing what else to say. It's not, she replied. You were trying to do something nice. They made you feel small. I sat there, staring at her. And then I just started crying. I didn't mean to. It just happened. She put the cereal down and hugged me. And for a second, I felt seen. The next day, I didn't speak to Mark. I left early and stayed out all day. Went to my mom's. Cleared my head. When I got back, Mark was waiting on the porch. You made your point, he said. Loud and clear. Can we move past this? I don't think you get it, I told him. This isn't about just one dinner. He rubbed his face. So what now? You're going to hold it over me forever. No, I said. But I'm not going to pretend we're fine when we're not. A week went by. Things were cold but civil. I kept my distance. I didn't cook, didn't clean anything but my own dishes. Mark tried to act normal, but I could tell he was getting annoyed. Then the twist happened. Mark's boss, his female boss, invited both of us to a work dinner. Some fancy event at a restaurant downtown. His company's senior partners would be there. Big night for him. Mark begged me to come. Said it was important. I agreed. That night, I wore a dress I hadn't worn in years. Did my hair up. Red lipstick. I looked damn good. At the restaurant, I noticed Mark was acting nervous. Not about the dinner, but about me. He kept whispering, just be polite, okay? And don't bring up family stuff. I smiled and said, of course. His boss, a sharp woman named Elise, asked about how we met, how married life was. Mark said, it's great. She's the perfect wife. Amazing cook. Keeps the house running. I just stared at him. Then I said, well, I used to cook. But then his father said I wasn't a real woman because of how I cooked, and Mark laughed. So now I take it easy. Elise blinked. He said that to you? Oh yes, I said. Right in my dining room. And my husband thought it was funny. Mark was mortified. Elise turned to him slowly. That true? He mumbled something and looked like he wanted to disappear. Later that night, Mark exploded in the car. What the hell was that? You made me look like an idiot. You did that to yourself, I replied. You lie about who we are to impress your boss, but treat me like garbage at home. He punched the steering wheel. Hard. You don't know how hard it is being caught in the middle. I'm not your enemy, I said. But if you keep acting like I am, don't be surprised when I start treating you like one. We rode home in silence. Then something changed. Mark started coming home later. I'd ask him where he was. He'd say, working. But his clothes smelled like cheap perfume. I checked our bank account. Big chunks of cash missing. His excuses didn't make sense. I wasn't dumb. Something was going on. And if he thought the dinner stunt was my big move, he hadn't seen anything yet. A few days after that dinner, I stopped asking Mark where he was. I stopped checking the clock when he didn't come home. I stopped looking at my phone when he ignored my texts. Not because I stopped caring, but because I knew. Something in me had shifted. I wasn't trying to fix it anymore. I was watching it fall apart and quietly taking notes. One night, while Mark was working late, I called Tasha. I asked her plainly, "Is Mark cheating on me?" There was a long pause on the other end. I don't want to be in the middle of this, she said. You already are, I replied. I just want the truth. Tasha was quiet again. Then she said, I haven't seen anything, but I heard him talking to someone on the phone. A woman. Not a coworker. He sounded different. That was enough. I waited till the weekend. Mark said he had to go into the office on Saturday. Left at 9 a.m. At 9:40, I drove to his office building. Parked 2 blocks away and waited. At 10:05, I saw him leave the back entrance in jeans and a t-shirt, not work clothes. He got into his car and drove off. I followed. My hands were shaking, heart pounding. He didn't go downtown. He drove to a quiet little neighborhood 15 minutes away. Pulled into the driveway of a beige house with a wind chime on the porch. A woman opened the door. Tall, redhead, maybe mid-30s. In pajamas. She smiled like she'd been waiting for him. They kissed. On the mouth. And then he went inside. I sat in my car for nearly an hour. I didn't cry. I just sat. Then I drove home. And started planning. Not the loud, messy kind of revenge. But the slow, devastating kind. The kind where they don't see it coming. The first thing I did was see a lawyer. Quietly. A woman my mom recommended. Her name was Renee. Older lady. Sharp as hell. I showed her bank statements. Told her about the affair. Told her about the dinner incident and everything since. She nodded slowly, took notes, and said, "Let's take our time. We'll do this right." I started collecting more evidence. I got a cheap GPS tracker, stuck it under Mark's bumper. Took pictures every time he visited that house. Meanwhile, I was sweet to him at home. I cooked again. Light, simple meals. Asked about his day. Pretended like I believed every lie. He relaxed. Thought I had moved on. Thought he got away with it. But here's where it twisted again. One night, his dad called me. "Richard. Listen," he said gruffly, "I don't like what happened before. But I've been meaning to talk to you." I braced myself. Then he said, "I think Mark's screwing around." I didn't expect that. "Why do you think that?" I asked. "He's been acting like I used to when I was cheating on his mom," he said bluntly. I recognized the signs. I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. So I asked him, "Why are you telling me this?" There was a pause. Then he said something I'll never forget. "Because you're the best thing that's ever happened to him. And I ruined that dinner. I treated you like you didn't belong. But the truth is, he doesn't deserve you." I sat there stunned. Richard, the man who once mocked my cooking, was telling me I deserved better. It hit me then. This wasn't just about food, or family, or even infidelity. This was about me learning my own worth, and deciding what I was going to do with it. And I was going to use every tool at my disposal. 2 weeks later, I hosted a dinner. This time, I invited everyone. Mark, his parents, his siblings, even his boss, Elise. Said I was planning something special and wanted everyone there. Mark didn't suspect a thing. Trying to show off again, he joked. I smiled. Something like that. He kissed my cheek, not knowing I had already filed the divorce papers. Not knowing his boss would be hearing a very interesting story soon. Not knowing that I had more cards left to play. That's what I call it in my head. It was a Saturday evening. I spent the whole day cooking, not because I forgave them, but because this was a performance. Every dish was perfect. A roast like the one Richard insulted. Fresh greens. Cornbread, mashed potatoes, cobbler for dessert. Just like before. Only this time, with poison of a different kind. Mark helped set the table, completely clueless. Kissed my shoulder like everything was fine. I let him. Just smiled. Watched him walk around like he was king of the house. At 6 o'clock sharp, everyone arrived. Richard and Doreen. Tasha. Elise, his boss, even came. She brought wine. The dining room was full of laughter and polite small talk. Everyone acted like the past didn't happen. like we were just a happy Southern family enjoying a meal. Then I stood up. Before we eat, I said, raising my glass, I just want to say a few things. Mark smiled at me. A toast? Cute. I smiled back. No, not a toast. A truth. The room quieted. Let's talk about what real women are. Richard's face stiffened. Doreen shifted in her seat. Elise raised her eyebrows, intrigued. A real woman, I said, can spend hours cooking and still be told she's not enough. A real woman can be mocked in her own home and still offer you a plate. Mark's smile faded. A real woman knows when she's being cheated on. Dead silence. Mark's fork hit the plate with a sharp clink. I kept going. For the last 3 months, Mark has been sleeping with a woman on Shelford Lane. Blonde. Drives a Honda. Likes cheap wine and wears too much vanilla perfume. Tasha gasped. Doreen went pale. Elise sat back, watching Mark squirm. Mark stood up. What the hell are you doing? I turned to him calmly. Showing your boss the kind of man she promoted. A liar. A cheater. A coward who hides behind his daddy's insults. Elise's face was unreadable. And you, I said, pointing at Richard, called me a fake woman. But at least I didn't raise a spineless man who cheats on his wife and lies to his family. Richard didn't say a word. I looked around the room. Dinner's ready. But you'll have to excuse me. I've lost my appetite. I walked out. That wasn't even the end. The next morning, I handed Mark the divorce papers over breakfast. He didn't say anything. Just stared. You can stay here until the end of the week, I said. Then I want you gone. He tried to fight. Said we could fix it. Cried. Said he loved me. I just looked at him. You loved having a maid. Not a wife. He moved out that Friday. Tasha kept in touch. She even apologized again. Said she respected me more than ever. Richard, to his weird credit, called me. Said he was ashamed. Said watching me take control was like watching a storm roll in. Doreen never said anything. Probably never will. Elise? She didn't fire Mark. But she gave him a demotion a month later. She said it was performance-related. I think she just didn't want to see his face anymore. Me? I started over. I sold the house a few months later, moved closer to my mom. Got a job at a local bakery where the smell of fresh bread replaced old resentment. I'm not perfect. I should have stood up for myself earlier. Should have spoken when the first insult came. Should have walked out the first time he laughed at me. But I learned. Next time, I won't cook for people who only come to eat. I'll cook for myself. And I'll be damn proud of it.